Welcome to Dial the Gate, everyone. My name is David Reed. Thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday. We usually record Sundays, but yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I've got Joseph Mallozzi standing by here for some discussion on Season 8. We're moving on through SG-1. Pretty soon we'll be hitting Atlantis. So thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, if you like Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, it would mean a great deal if you click the like button. It really makes a difference with YouTube's algorithm and will definitely help the show grow its audience. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend, and if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. Giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. This is key if you plan on watching live, and clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next several days on both the Dial the Gate and gateworld.net YouTube channels. Without further ado, let's bring in Mr. Joseph Mallozzi, writer and executive producer of Stargate SG-1. Welcome again, sir. Thank you so much for being here.
Good to see you again.
I wanted to know if you had seen this. This was concept art for the cover of Stargate Worlds, for the box art.
No, I hadn't seen that. Pretty cool.
It's extremely it's one of my few pieces from that time in my life, and I always wondered, did you have any communication with Brad and Rob in terms of where they were going with this project? Because I know that they were consulting on it.
Not really. I feel it's such a blur now because there were so many. I feel those games that kind of started and stopped and then faded away. So I remember seeing a bunch of stuff, and I remember Brad and Robert being in those discussions. But after the first few just kind of came and went, I honestly stopped paying attention.
Right. No, that's certainly fair. I mean, almost at a certain point, it's like, okay, I've got to protect myself from abuse because nothing is happening. Right. I mean, there were some that were the. Did you ever play the Stargate SG-1 Unleashed that came out on mobile devices?
I did not.
Oh man, it was good. It was well done. Yeah, it was point and tap, and it was full casts, voiceovers. It was pretty well done. I was impressed, and it was so disappointing to see the whole thing get shut down.
Yeah, it's too bad. I mean, I think one of the reasons why is because it's always interesting to go on those adventures with SG-1, but I think the real fun for a fan would be to say do an adventure in the writer's room where you break a story for 6 hours, and then you spend a half an hour deciding what you're going to get for lunch, and then basically the lunch order comes in and you're missing your sushi, and then you got to send someone back to go get the lunch. It's just basically you never know. It's constant curveballs being thrown at you.
These are important decisions.
Yeah, I've never seen a game like that.
How do you think? I mean, the shows get made. This is what happens. That's great. Absolutely. Let's talk about Season 8. So we have another. So this is this 6, 7, 8. This is the third season on Sci-Fi Channel, and once again, you guys are thinking that, this is probably going to be it. Rick, I'm guessing in season 7, please correct me if I'm wrong, Rick is saying, this is probably my last year. Was that the case? Or
I think Rick was kind of saying that for a while. And I think he finally kind of made the decision heading into 8. And so we wrap things up.
I always thought that the show would end on fishing, and it's interesting that season 8 does, but not only does it, but it does twice. And it's I think it's a great
I mean, I'm just saying in a way, really season 8 is the end of what some people term classic SG-1, right? Because, I think I've mentioned this elsewhere. Brad and Robert had an idea for a spin-off called Stargate Command, which ultimately kind of became SG-1's 9th and 10th seasons.
Yeah, and it would structurally have basically been the same show, but branding it would have. There's some thought that branding it differently would have given it a different kind of like almost new legs with the network. Like I don't know contractually how things would have moved around, but it would have almost have been like as far as the network is concerned, a reset with a new show. Is that fair, or is that kind of like
no? That is fair. But on the other hand, I wonder if Atlantis would have come about, for instance, if we would have been doing
it's true
Stargate Command.
Huh. That's a fair point. Let's take a look at some of your season 8 episodes.
All right.
So you open the season going right back to picking up the pieces where we left off in Lost City. Jack's frozen down in Antarctica. And we've got Elizabeth Weir in charge of the SGC. So we went from Jessica Steen to Torri Higginson. So, and I was expecting the story to have something like, oh, Dr. Weir, did you change your hair color? Oh no, I just went back to the original color. I've always been a brunette. The blonde was just a phase. Some kind of like hanging a lantern, like acknowledging that there was this change in cast. But you guys were like, you know what? Let's just move on with the story. Was there any like conscious thought potentially? Let's acknowledge this in some way. Torri always said, you got a new shirt. Oh, it's a nice new shirt.
No, any acknowledgement would have been just that kind of meta. And we elected not to. Although, there were plenty of times when we did.
I was going to say, when Vala comes through the gate, she says, I don't know you. I would remember you. Yes. Ben Browder.
Yeah.
I think it's just, that's a different situation. I think that's fair because that's a sci-fi series that a lot of Stargate fans had watched. And so in that specific situation, you're acknowledging a series connection there. Absolutely. New Order Part 1, we also, if I'm not mistaken, we also bring back Patrick Curry in the first hour, if I'm remembering correctly. I think that's the case. What was it like revisiting that arc from season 6?
It's actually one of my favorite season 6 arcs, and I love the character of Fifth. And just kind of in general, I kind of really like the episode for its guest stars, because I always like the kind of the color of the varied system lore. So we had Kira Clavel as Amaterasu. We had Steve Basic, who's always fantastic, as Camulus. It really felt like we went right back to kind of like the roots of the show. Just because SG-1 was always kind of a mix of kind of the show mythology that we've grown so used to, that had a lot of the kind of a serialized elements. On the other hand, a lot of the more kind of standalone out there episodes that really had no connection to the past. And this one had very much a connection to the past. It was a lot of fun in that respect.
New Order, in so many respects, is giving birth to new content from gestating pieces over the seasons. You kind of get, it's kind of almost a Summit Part 2 with bringing in Amaterasu, you, and Camulus. And you also you also evolve the replicators even further. I know you were in the writer's room when they were talking about making a Carter villain. Tell us about turning I mean, I know it wasn't specifically you're written by, but I mean, at the same time, that's a big deal, getting a replicator Carter.
Yeah. I mean, one of the great things about sci-fi is you can always play with stuff like that, usually through time travel or, the road not taken, or parallel universe stories where you kind of investigate our milieu or our characters through a completely different lens. Kind of the classic bearded evil Spock. And yes. So, it's always fun to sort of do a twist, like a really warped twist on our characters. And I forget who came up with the idea. I'm sure it was either, Brad or Robert. But I just love it. And I'm sure, I was about to call her Samantha. Amanda loved playing the bad guy.
I think that could have gone for another season.
I
think there could have been more mileage out of that.
A great big bad. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, give her some more insidiousness. I mean, don't get me wrong. Gemini's a great script, but I always felt like, I wish that they hadn't knocked her off so quickly. Again, thinking season 8, it's probably going to be the last season, right? So you're not going to leave fans hanging on this one, which was probably the better call. So exactly. Lockdown. The return of Anubis, which surprised me because I was like, okay, we're done with this arc. And then you guys are like, no, we're going to have another season. What was the nucleus of Lockdown? Was that it?
I mean, yeah, kind of. I mean, as I mentioned back in at the end of season 4, Paul and I were like, I don't know how we're going to be able to come up with new original ideas for season 5. And then we ultimately discovered that the show's mythology episodes we've done before are rich fodder for new stories. And, I always liked Anubis as a villain. He was actually kind of one of my favorites. So, it was kind of fun in a way to kind of bring him back. It's kind of interesting also that our guest star, Gavin Hood, who plays our general, went on to, I think he won an Oscar for directing, I forget, it was a Russian film. And he also went on to direct one of the Marvel movies. I think it was like Wolverine or...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ender's Game, I love.
Too. Oh, right. Yeah.
He was great with that.
Yeah.
So... Yeah, very talented guy for sure. I would have loved to have seen him again in some capacity. But again, it's one of those situations where, nope, this is it based on the needs of the story. And, with Lockdown, in hindsight, and I'm curious to see if you share the thought process on that, because of where it went with later in the season, him sitting on another throne. I think in hindsight, for me personally, narratively, it would have made sense for him to successfully escape. Because when he ends up on the ice planet, it's like, okay, how did he get out of that situation? That had to have been it. He had to have had some kind of ascended help. That was the only door that he could walk through, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, System Lords have always been a resourceful bunch. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Did you know at the end of Lockdown that you were bringing him back later on in the season?
No. Okay. So what was the name of the episode where we brought him back?
Reckoning Part 1.
Yeah, Reckoning Part 1. Yeah, no, I think at that point we did not, because I think, we usually went off, we would spin the ideas for the following season, and usually we'd get up to like 7, maybe 8 episodes broken, and then we'd all go off and write, and then we'd come back and resume and spin. So basically at that point, I think Lockdown was episode 3.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I'm not sure, but it was definitely in the back half of the season. I think episode like 16 or 17.
Before you go away to write the first chunk, knowing that the back half is going to exist, typically on a season, would you guys have an idea of like the broader beats that you would want to hit by the end of that season, firmly placed or relatively globularly like placed in your mind so that, okay, we can't deal with these things now. We deliberately want to save XYZ later.
Yes, usually we always had a pretty good idea of the overall blueprint for the season and where we wanted to end up.
That's pretty legit. Thank you. We have Endgame, which is the final episode for Ronnie Cox.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. And we're expanding the idea of the trust. I think this was the episode, if I'm not mistaken. There was one before it that there was a reversal in terms of the information where Daniel found out that they were called the trust before that was meant to be revealed. This was one of those where there was some kind of technical information that was accidentally reversed in the episodes, if I'm not mistaken. Correct, if I'm not mistaken. Tell us about Endgame. More stuff with the Russians, the Golder on Earth.
More stuff. Yeah, I mean that was actually quite a fun episode. Like you said, Ronnie Cox, having him back, and Ronnie's always, a delight. And I mentioned how I ran into him in LA like a couple of years ago at a diner, and I was like, hey, Ronnie, and just wanted to say, I work with you on Stargate, and he was like so complimentary about his time on Stargate and how sort of the production, treated him really well. So that's always nice. And really the idea for Endgame came about as a result of, I think it was an idea that Brad had, and it was really more kind of the visual of coming down to the gate room and the gate not being there. What's the story? So we had to figure out a way to get the gate out.
Osiris had a ship in orbit. It's been orbiting for a little less than a season, a little less than a year at that point. And that's a great nugget where it's like, well, she had to have come from somewhere, That's another one that I wish we had always gone back to was Sarah Gardner, because Anna Louise was brilliant.
She was. She was.
Was there any side question? Was there any consideration for bringing her back? Was it just the story didn't come up, or did she say, I'm not going to be available for the next little while?
No. She was a great villain. I think really, like you said, you head into the season assuming it's your last. So there are really things you want to sort of deal with.
Yeah, we resolved her.
It's going to be your last. Yeah, your last season. So
that's fair.
That was a point of focus, and I like I said, I would have loved to have had her back if we would have had a story specific to her character.
Absolutely. I think I got it mixed up. I think I mentioned that Endgame had the Russians. I don't think we get the Russians until Full Alert, so I'm wrong about that. I apologize. It's good to be king. Another resolution for one of our favorite guests, Tom McBeath. Well, it's not so much a resolution as it is because in season 6 he really had one with Paradise Lost, but this is one of those where it's like, if we've got the time, let's check in on Harry and see what's up. Tell us about It's Good to Be King. Yeah,
I mean, we always kind of like the funny episodes, and even overall, I think Stargate SG-1 especially was infused with a certain sense of humor throughout all its episodes, but occasionally you would do those episodes that would veer more into the humor. And, it was just kind of a no-brainer for us because we just kind of loved the Jack Harry relationship that
and Rick did too.
Brad and Robert. Yeah. So it was just kind of a fun episode. And I remember Wayne Brady guest starred.
Yes, he did.
And I remember being told about Wayne Brady's in wardrobe. So I usually, if it's my episode, I like to go down and say, hey, welcome to Stargate. And I went down to welcome Wayne Brady to the Stargate. And he was trying on his Jaffa uniform. And I was like, hey, welcome to Stargate. But he was so tuned out. He was so focused on how cool he looked in his Jaffa uniform. It was great. And he was like super nice. I mean, he was doing like a comedy show in Vancouver around the same time. And he offered, the crew and tickets. And it was just, one of those episodes that I think back to fondly on sort of the production and just the performances as well. I mean, Tom is always excellent, but he really just makes a meal out of this one.
Oh man, does he? They're walking up and he's got the fruit in his mouth. It's just
Yeah.
so funny.
Yeah.
And it was a real, I love the scene when he admits to the town that he's, not a prophet, but I think her name is Garen. She's like, our legal code, our aqueduct system or something similar. Were these all written on the walls? He's like, no, I came up with them. And it's like, yeah, this guy has come a long way, and they vote him back in anyway, or they keep him where he is. And SG-1's like, well, we tried.
Yeah, a nice little redemption beat for a character.
Absolutely. We're not not all the villains are destined for the gutter.
Right. Right. And I don't know if he was always. He was more a thorn in SG-1's side rather than I think an out and out villain. Absolutely. I think he started as a villain,
but yes,
and then became kind of a more colorful, I guess, agent of chaos, if you will.
Yeah, that's fair. Definitely a wild card. He was SG-1's version of the Janai. And those kinds of elements. Man, I really mixed these two up, Full Alert and Endgame. I apologize. But yeah, Full Alert, the Russian elements. Well, another one of the earlier appearances of Mike Dopud as a Russian. Yeah. What a fantastic actor, He
is.
Everything that talk about someone who makes a meal out of characters. This guy, he had played in some respects in SG-1 with Odai Ventrell, it's kind of like the perfect person that you would think would get sucked up into the Lucian Alliance. So when he was Varro for a while there, I thought that was him. Yeah. But in some cases,
and who knows? It could very well be. I mean, he could be operating under an assumed name.
Assumed name, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. There are certain circumstances where you guys, like Lorne, for instance, Kevin Smith was introduced in season 7, and then you bring him back in 2 years later for Atlantis season 2. What is the process by which you say, well, we're bringing this character, like for Lorne, for example, was Lorne meant to be on Atlantis, or was it that Cavan was, if you can recall, Cavan was hired, and then it's like, well, you know what, he already played this military guy over here, depending on who wrote the episode, because there's, I'm sure, a percentage because you create, whoever it was created that character gets, I believe, a percentage for bringing them back in. When is it decided when that's going to be the case?
Honestly, that really has nothing to do with it. And,
it doesn't.
No. Okay. I think, to be honest with you, I forget how exactly it works, but percentages and royalties are never figure into it. It's really more comes down to sort of what serves the story and how much we like the character. I mean, the perfect example of that is McKay.
Correct.
What David Hewlett did with that performance, and just the fact that we were short a crew member
right
on Atlantis, and then Rob floated the idea of McKay, and then he just
that's all she wrote, man.
It. And it's the same thing with Robert Picardo's Woolsey. He was a character who, the pencil pushing bureaucrat who we loved in his one guest spot. And so we brought him back again. And every time we would bring him back, we'd kind of flesh out his character a little more, to the point where basically he becomes the lovable commander of the Atlantis expedition. But his character doesn't really change. You just get to know him better. And
right.
Exactly. Well, that was where he's coming from.
That was the thing with McKay as well. You never took away that edge that he had in 48 Hours. And that was the fun of it. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you or someone else, but I remember thinking to myself when I saw that the promotional shots and for Atlantis and David Hewlett was there. I remember telling Darren, this is going to be a disaster. No one's going to like this guy. But that is not what happened. My expectations were absolutely defied every step of the way for David Hewlett, because the fan base was willing to give him a free pass. I don't know if they would in this day and age, if the character came on now. But then it was like, you know what? Let's just see what he can do. And he was just magic.
Yeah.
So It's just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Citizen Joe,
Mm-hmm.
Dan Castellaneta.
Mm-hmm.
When did he come into the process for this? Was it just a coup that you guys got him, when you did? Because it was well down the pipeline, or?
It was kind of a coup.
Well, it was definitely a coup. Let me say that.
Now, Richard Dean Anderson was obviously a huge Simpsons fan.
And he had already done The Simpsons, so they owed him one.
Yeah, so, no, actually, I think it might have been the other way around. He was actually invited to do a script reading. I mean, I could be wrong. Do a script reading or take part in a script reading. He went in and he met everyone and he loved it. And then we were looking to cast, and we ended up casting Dan because, Rick had met him and he was great in the episode. And then I believe subsequently Dan got a writing assignment on The Simpsons, and he repaid us by writing them in. And I could be wrong, but maybe check the date on maybe that how they line up. So, but that's what I seem to recall at the time.
So Citizen Joe, that's aired 18th February 2005, mm-hmm. And then.
What was the episode?
Richard Dean Anderson.
Simpsons.
Sorry, everybody. I'm we'll get to really the bottom curious. Of this. Yeah, we are good. Kiss Bang Bangalore. Mm-hmm. Came out 9th April 2006.
2006. Yeah.
So isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. I have always had that backwards. Mm-hmm. Well, spank me, Rosie. All right. A great clip show idea.
Yes.
Holy
cow. A lot of fun, very funny.
And it introduces a new concept that, kind of like Richard Woolsey, is almost a one-off, but mm-hmm. later on, when you're moving into content for season 9 and eventually, Universe, what a piece of technology. I've got one right here. Mm-hmm. These things, you wouldn't think that this would be a cornerstone of Stargate's sci-fi, but it is. Yeah. How cool is that? It's one of those situations where you create a plot device, and mm-hmm. you kind of have to massage it into position as you go forward, because both of these characters who have the ancient gene, they touched it and they could kind of see each other's minds, mm-hmm. What they were experiencing. And then in the next episode where we see them again, it's one-way communication because the stones are attached, mm-hmm. but the other characters on the other side aren't awake because they don't have stones attached in the terminal. It's a situation where you kind of have to evolve the technology as mm-hmm. you move forward based on the needs of the story. And I imagine you guys did that a lot.
Yeah. Let's be honest, those communication stones, it was a really cool idea, but they were incredibly controversial, especially when you get into Stargate Universe. And, the reason for doing it, obviously, was to sort of open up the almost claustrophobic feel of Universe, where you're on this ship, mm-hmm. and we were looking to avoid doing the Force like we did in SG-1. We wanted it to be as alien, as much as out there as possible. And so a way of opening things up was using the communication stones to communicate back with Earth. And that created all sorts of complications as well. But some in the room would argue that it made things a little too easy, the communication with Earth. Some didn't really love the Earth connection because they kind of led to stories that were, I don't want to say less sci-fi in their conceit, but certainly more grounded in the reality of the here and now, as opposed to sort of the far-flung adventures of a crew in a distant galaxy. So it was controversial with the fans, and I'll admit, in the writers' room, some of the writers loved it, some of the writers did not.
Where did you fall?
I didn't like them at all.
You
To
didn't
be
care
honest
for
with you.
them.
I was the of the opinion that I just like, I understood why you use them to sort of open up the world, but I just always found them kind of like a step back into lesser interesting explorations.
So-
I mean, it all went to character, really. So, I mean,
Yeah.
in that respect, I can't say it was like, it wasn't a waste of time or anything. I just found those stories less interesting, and kind of the way the apparatus of the communication stones kind of muddy.
So I'm curious now, because are you saying that you would have not preferred for there to have been Earthbound stories in universe, or are you saying that if there were Earthbound stories, you would have preferred them to be in a different way?
I probably would not have done Earthbound stories.
Really? Had them completely cut off and out there?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, because for Atlantis season 1, they're cut off. And that was, I think, a major part of the story. In some respects, I think Atlantis would have been served better for being cut off longer. I mean, think of the Wraith coming and then Earth saving the day. It's kind of like a Deus Ex Machina in the end. They're coming through with the ZPM, and they got this ship coming and everything else. If they had to fight off the Wraith with all that they had brought with them from Earth in that first go around, I think it would have been a more intense story and a more feudal situation as well. But I mean, Atlantis, was always trying to achieve this lighter balance too. So it may not have been the show to go that place.
Yeah. And again, I don't disagree with you, even though like I was the one who came up with the idea of the gate bridge. And then afterwards, in hindsight, I was like, maybe.
Then you guys blow it down.
But then again, I mean, if we hadn't done it, we wouldn't have had episodes like Midway where Teal'c, shows up. So
sometimes you have to build up an idea only to later destroy it and take satisfaction that either we went there and it was great, or we went there and let's never go there again.
Right.
Absolutely. Moebius. So was this your brainchild?
No, I mean, the brainchild, any script is always a brainchild of the writer's room, where you all sit down. Maybe someone has a kernel of an idea, but I don't recall who came up with the original notion. But, it was just another case where we all sat down and beat out the two-parter over the course of, I think, a week, which is kind of crazy when you think how quickly we beat out stories. Because I think most shows that do 10 or 13 episode seasons usually do writer's room for 3 months to break stories. Whereas, we used to do them in, maybe 2 episodes a week. Meanwhile,
wow.
I mean, on Dark, my record was Dark Matter. For the first season of Dark Matter, it was Paul Martin-Garrow and I, and we broke all 13 episodes over the course of 2.5 weeks, which is crazy.
But it also suggests that you guys have got some fairly good ideas in that first batch and have a very clear road of where you want to go.
I mean, yes. I mean, the hard part of the writer's room is coming up with that initial idea. Once you come up with that initial idea, then everybody starts thinking and they start coming at it from different angles, and the story begins to take form. So really, it's that initial notion, that spark that really gets everything going.
So what was the spark for Moebius? Was it, we got to get a fresh ZPM to Atlantis? What was that?
I think the spark, to be honest with you, was the belief that this was going to be our last season, and that we were going to wrap things up, and we were going to say goodbye to classic SG-1 and goodbye to Rick. And, we wanted to do a story that paid tribute to what had come before. And it's what I mentioned earlier on, the idea that you get to explore our characters in different ways. And so it's kind of not only fun for us and kind of a salute to the series, but it's, extra special to the audience as well, and longtime fans who will get like the in jokes and the contrasts. And I think Moebius 1 and 2 still ranks as like one of the top 20 episodes.
It's up there for sure. And you got to love Rick's line, and I'm paraphrasing. Let me kill him now, so I don't have to in 10,000 years. It's like you can't do that. There are certain things that have to happen just by being here. Putting footprints in the sand, we're contaminating the timeline. So, and it's in hindsight, it's like we now know that SG-1 took part in that rebellion on Earth. That they were there. Yeah, they played a role.
That's always kind of fun when you're able to do time travel in a way that really has our protagonists not only participate, but influence in a way that fits into the timeline.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting question. If you remove the Stargate from history, if Ra takes the Stargate with him, what happens, all those thousands of years later to our characters? Carter becomes a second-rate assistant, and Daniel becomes a third or fourth-rate English teacher. You have to do something with the characters, And I was always like, well, that's interesting. I'm not sure I love it, but, that's...
You wouldn't have watched that show then. You wouldn't have watched that show. Probably not.
I don't think so.
Okay.
To be perfectly honest.
Okay.
But you know what? It's still fun.
Yeah.
Who was it that I was talking with, when you guys were in production? They said, we're in bonus land now. There's a certain pinch yourself. I can't believe this is happening to me. We're doing 8 seasons of this great sci-fi show. Let's throw something against the wall here and see if it sticks. If it does, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. 200, great example of something that was just like amazing, and it's just so out there. Moebius has those elements as well.
Yeah.
And to be fair, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, unlike 200 though, I think Moebius really is grounded in a real story and real stakes and really speaks to, like I said, the mythology of the show.
And you were not only the mythology of the show, but the mythology of the franchise. That's something that I failed to mention earlier with It's Good to Be King. You introduced an Atlantis asset into the SG-1 universe that you later bring back here.
Yep.
Exactly. I loved, especially with this season, it was certainly done later on as well, but season 8 of SG-1 and season 1 of Atlantis really share a lot of story elements where, in Before I Sleep, one of my favorite Carl Binder stories. You introduce Janice and the whole idea that the first time they went to Atlantis, it didn't work. Everyone drowned. And then at the end of it, there's a nugget that, Janice says to Weir, I'll continue my research. And here it is, proof that he did. And God knows what else he created. I still believe he created Reese, but there's so many story connections there. And was that something that you were deliberately going into with season 8 and season 1 of let's tie some of these elements together? Or while you were going, it was like, this makes sense to share this here and there, and let's reward the audience for watching both shows. Do you hear me?
Yep. Sorry, I lost you there. I lost internet connection.
Did my words cut out too?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Let me back up. So when you were doing season 8 of SG-1 and season 1 of Atlantis, was there a deliberate approach to share story elements, or was it while you guys were going along? It was like, well, you know what, this works here and this works here, so let's reward the audience for watching both by giving them things that only they would know if they watched both shows.
When did we start Atlantis?
That was 2004.
2000. So basically season 8 and Atlantis season 1 premiered at the same time?
Yes.
Yeah. So, in that case, we were crazy as it sounds, producing 40 episodes of television.
Right.
The same year. So we were breaking the stories at the same time. So, definitely then the directions or the stories that we were telling on one show were informing or hopefully setting up elements in the other shows as well.
Got it. Yeah, there's just certain, I guess it just proves that, when you've got a good idea over here, if there's anything that can be used over here, let's just go ahead and share it and make it happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
pretty successful season, all things considered.
Yeah.
And, was it when you moved into season 9, was it tough? I mean, you had the huge benefit of Ben and Claudia, which we will get into next month. Was it, even though Rick had certainly earned every bit of everything that he had done with his time on the show and saying, you know what, I'm good now, and we're all like, you know what, this has been amazing, we get it. Was it still hard to see him go?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was a lot of fun to write for. We would always gravitate to the characters that had that sense of humor. So whether it was, McKay, it was a great example. Vala was another great example. And obviously Rick, he was the guy. He was the everyman. He was, we would always kind of adventure vicariously through Rick, and his character would always say the stuff you would always think, but obviously could never say.
Right.
And so he was just kind of, that character was a lot of fun to write for. And season 9 was very different, not any worse or necessarily any better. It was just different. And we did miss the O'Neill character.
Was there, conscious or otherwise, spoken or otherwise, and I'll just ask you to be as candid as you're willing, concerned that the show might not work without him?
Yeah.
Okay.
We got that 9th season pickup, and we'll go into that. But I mean, there was uncertainty as to whether we would get that 9th season.
Yeah.
And I think casting Ben Browder was kind of one of the elements that helped get that pickup. I mean, the ratings were pretty solid as well. And we were kind of building that Friday night Sci-Fi Friday block.
That's right. That was must-see television.
The network would always kind of build up and then knock down, and then build up and then knock down.
It's so true. Oh my God, what were they doing? Yeah. Oh gosh.
Tune in. Come on, tune in. Support these shows. Okay, that's enough out of you.
Yeah, exactly. Wrestling.
Yes.
And it shows. We'll talk about this probably a little bit further moving forward into this. But Lou Gossett, Beau Bridges, Ben Browder, Claudia Black. A lot of, and not specifically the ones that I just mentioned, but a lot of talent. From my understanding, is you got these high caliber people, many of whom were doing it because their families loved the show. Yeah, Mel Harris is another great example of that. Her son Byron loved the show. And you were getting these people who were, just absolute superstars who were like, I can do what I want at this point in my career. And I want to do things that my family will enjoy.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I remember actually reading an interview with Forrest Whitaker where he mentioned Stargate and Sci-Fi Fridays. And I was like, guys, we got to get Forrest Whitaker on the show. Sadly, we never did, but that would have been a dream.
Oh gosh. Yeah. You know what? I mean, you had a great following there, and it was, that was the years of TV Guide, being on the cover of TV Guide and everything else. So it was a great era for Stargate for sure. And, I think it resonates to this day. Got some fan questions for you, sir.
Oh yeah. Let's do it.
What is the Goran Andonovsky? This is kind of an aside to what we discussed. Maybe we can get into a little bit of it. Was there a specific story driving King Harry Maybourne, the story behind putting him as a king?
Just really the character himself. I mean, that's a kind of a dream situation for a character like Harry Maybourne. And I mean, obviously the inspiration was the man who would be king.
Right.
But we, most of the stories would always come about as a result of, wouldn't it be fun if we did this? And certainly O'Neill and Harry were always fun. So if we could find a way to sort of create a story for them and put them in kind of out there situation, we obviously would. And this, this was a perfect example of those pieces kind of falling into place.
And it worked hilariously. Russell Baldwin, with Earth having become so technologically advanced by the end of the show, I'm guessing he means SG-1, maybe the franchise, how would you have reset the balance with any alien threats that Earth would have faced in the future? And that's assuming you would want to reset the balance at all.
Yeah, I mean, at that, that's a tough question in that, obviously we dealt with the Ori knowing that the 10th season would have been our last. I don't know what we would have done for season 11 if we had gotten that like Apple deal. Maybe things would have changed. But honestly, I don't know. I mean, there's certain technologies that, again, the writer's room would always come together for the stories, but there would be healthy debate. I was never a big fan of the beaming technology we had. And I remember actually Ben Browder especially was not a huge fan. He'd be coming by my office like, there's got to be a way to get rid of that beaming technology. Like, something happens, you end up inside a rock or something and they can't use it.
And the only solution that I can even think of is one that you kind of use with the hyperspace windows is the Terror device in Atlantis. You create something out there in the universe that once it turns on distorts certain frequencies and makes things unusable.
Well, yes, but
what a great idea.
Also, yeah, but there's also what we often did with technologies is we just send it to Area 51 and our incompetent, slow-moving, bureaucratic government would, it would just disappear into sort of whatever, backlog of things they have to get around to, and you just wouldn't hear about it again. And it may seem kind of like, implausible, but really, when you think of how governments work, totally believable.
Totally believable.
Yes.
Aside. The Air Force wanted to support Independence Day, Dean and Roland's Independence Day, if they did not mention Area 51. That's what Dean Devlin has said. The Air Force clearly supported SG-1. I guess I can't believe I've never asked this question, but I haven't. Were you ever given any crap for using Area 51 in stories?
No. I was never, and I don't think Rob and Brad were either, because I think they would have mentioned it.
Yeah, I've always wondered that, because you guys used Area 51.
Did we use Area 51, or did we refer to it as Area 52? Area
52 was considered the Stargate program at the end of season 1, I believe. Area 51 was definitely visited. Okay. The mimic devices were stored there. McKay was sent there. For sure, Area 51 was the thing.
Well, I guess Area 51. I'm not sure what really the difference would be between the film and the series, but maybe the Air Force are going kind of accustomed to sort of the way the series worked and kind of the fun aspect of the show. And
no one's going to take this seriously.
Well, exactly. It's plausible deniability.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, in the words of Hammond, in Wormhole Extreme, in the event of any future breach, we'll be able to point to this program.
Yes, exactly.
And it's like, there you go. That's if it stays on the air. All right. Eva Lipinska, Ryak's last appearance in Stargate was in Sacrifices. Was that the planned end of his story? Did you guys have anything else in mind moving forward? He's mentioned, he's referenced as being part of negotiations.
Yeah, I mean, he and a lot of other characters were characters who we would revisit every now and again, and it would always be story dependent. So you would think that, okay, well, their story is wrapped up, but if you ever kind of revisit that world, or you have a story that that would require them, then you would go back to them. So I mean, once we'd written Sacrifices, there were really no plans to revisit the character in the future. But had we done a season 11, who knows? Maybe we would have.
Damn Apple. Not Apple. Sci-Fi Channel. Jeez, man. The Dragon AF1. I'd like to know how Joe would make Eli wake the crew up if he had the opportunity to write that story.
You should check out my blog, because I think shortly after the cancellation, I did a dedicated blog post that actually has turned out to be my most read blog post over 13 years of daily blogging. What possibly could have happened? I mean, I can't really say really what could have happened, because we never got the chance to sort of sit down and spin stories for the following year. I remember actually we had kind of been told that we would maybe get a pickup for a third and final season, and then that went away. Yeah. And that was that. So
that I think I remember that, because I loved the alternate human race concept that you guys threw. And the moment that the time travel stuff happened earlier on in that season, I was like, I know we're going to go back to those guys. They didn't just go nowhere. They went in the past, or something equivalent to it. And I remember, I think you indicated that one of the possibilities was that an SG team from that version of humanity was operating in that galaxy. And I was like, that is cool. Our descendants, went and created their own versions of an SG team.
Again, and it would have explained why, some of the planets, for instance, we visited would have human, human life. Because that's sort of another thing, basically, why weren't we, how are we running into humans all the time? And it kind of made sense within the conceit of the Stargate system established in SG-1, less so in Atlantis. And, in the universe, we stuck to mainly aliens, but this would have been a great explanation for why we could have encountered,
absolutely, for sure,
distant descendants.
Jet Ison, do you have any influence to help bring Stargate back to Gloria in a new series, or will you be more of a supportive writer? Again, that's all Brad at this point. Right?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of influence, it's really the fandom.
Yeah. There we go.
I think obviously it's Brad, it's great material, and it's the fandom, and those three things. I consider myself a facilitator of sorts between all these elements, and if anything I can do to help, I'll be more than happy to. But I'm not going to get a little ahead of myself. Brad, is spearheading the creative efforts to get a new show off the ground, and there was a delay due to the pandemic, and then I think there was like a reshuffle at MGM, and I don't know if that affected things at all. Given that,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah,
for sure.
So, hopefully things will be back on track, and or are back on track, and we'll get
hashtag SG4.
Yeah,
I'm all about
SG4.
Yeah. Scotty 0709. Any reason why you guys knocked off? A particular reason why you knocked off Jacob and Selmak in season 8? There's an indication in like season 2, when they're deciding whether or not they're going to even like each other, that I'm going to spend the next 100 years with you. We have to spend some time together.
No, again, I think it was kind of tying up elements, assuming the 8th season would be its last, and specifically with regard to elements of the Goa'uld and the Tok'ra. We were looking for, I guess, closure, and really that's what drove that particular decision.
That's fair. Chantel Leo, what's your opinion of the Pete storyline? I would have liked the character more if he had been introduced as someone on the fringes of the SG program, like Kerry Johnson with Jack.
I love David Delaware as an actor. He was great. The character, I mean,
hindsight's 2020, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's always the way you want to sort of explore characters, and then, like you said, in hindsight, you're like, was that necessarily the best way to do that? Was it the most interesting way to do that? Did he come across as a bit of a creep? Maybe,
But I love it. You give him the line in season 8. You didn't shy away from me when you found out I stalked you. Those little nods to the fans are perfect. It's like, because they do kind of go hand in hand, in so many respects. You're responding to the actors in terms of developing stories, and you're watching what the fan community is doing in developing stories. Not so deliberately, but still, hey, if there's something there. Shelley Johnson, Vala, was introduced in season 8. Was she supposed to have a bigger part in that season, or was she definitely a one-off in season 8?
She was definitely a one-off in season 8, but we loved her performance so much. We loved her character that there were, almost immediately after we watched the director's cut of the episode, we thought for certain that she would be a character we would be bringing back in the near future.
Absolutely. And what a coup to have the two of them, playing off of each other again. And I know that there was reticence of putting them too closely together because, they had obviously been at the end of Farscape husband and wife. But I love, I think it's Bounty. I love the high school reunion plot. It's so good.
Yeah,
Smile.
I mean, they're actors. They're actors who play different characters, and so I kind of found it odd that there was kind of a reticence to cast them both as regulars, because the feeling was it's too much like Farscape. Well, it's actually nothing like Farscape. I mean, you could argue that maybe there's certain elements of Cam's character that aren't really a bit of John Crichton, but Vala's character and Aaron Soon are completely different characters.
Totally different. I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of the reasons she was like, oh, I'll jump on extending this role, because I mean, I'm sure she had to have had a good time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Why else, move your family, clearly on the other side of the world for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have to follow the work too. So there is that.
Yeah. Yes.
Shelley Johnson. Chris Judge is listed as a writer on a number of episodes that deal with Jaffa. How did that happen? Was he the one who came up with the Jaffa culture?
He was not the one who came up with the Jaffa culture, but as obviously the show developed, he had story ideas, and I think in some instances he actually wrote the teleplay, the script. So he did end up having a couple of writing credits on the show.
Absolutely, he did. They were good ones. I just rewatched The Changeling the other day, and when it gets to that moment of Daniel saying, I haven't left your side. I'm not going anywhere. It's like, it's so good. I can't pronounce this name, so I'll spell it Xuiqila. I'm not even going to try. When would you know, year over year, if you had been picked up for a new season? It wasn't consistent, right?
It was never consistent.
Why was
sometimes
that?
I don't know. That's a good question for sci-fi executive. You should have them on Dial the Gate. I'll have some questions for them too. But we wouldn't find out till like the last minute, and it was just kind of very frustrating. And we would kind of like, poke and prod, and they'd be like, we're going to wait till you finish airing, or we're having our wilderness retreat. We're packing up the bongos and the peyote, and we'll convene and let you know next week.
There you go.
Yeah.
It must have been, and we've had this conversation, because like every waking moment, your brain had to have been at least not actively creating stories, but scanning for them. A part of your mind would have had to have, for those several years, always been set aside to the possibility of, okay, I need to be on the lookout for this idea. Even if I'm having dinner with my wife, I'm not necessarily 100% always there, because this is a problem that's never going away. It's a wonderful problem to have, but you're a workhorse. You've got to generate stories.
That is exactly it. And the pressures that come with being in production are only rivaled by the pressures of being in pre-production when you have to come up with story ideas. One is actually delivering scripts, and the other is coming up with ideas that you can turn into scripts. So those two are like the most pressure filled. I mean, production is, sure, there's a lot of pressure in production, but at that point, there's so many other cogs in the machine that are contributing and helping to put it all together. You're on a schedule but when you're writing those scripts, you're on a schedule, but you're on your own. Whereas when you're trying to come up with an idea, there is no schedule. It's kind of fast and loose, but sooner is better than later.
Absolutely. One of my issues with myself, and so is it called imposter syndrome? Where I'm not sure if that's the definition or not. Where I've achieved something, and it's like I don't know if I'm actually entitled to be where I am.
Yeah, that's imposter, and everybody has imposter syndrome. Everybody. Where
it's like you're doing 40 episodes a year, and by Atlantis Season 3, you have done 40 episodes a year for starting 3 years. I don't know if I would always be able to say to myself, "I'm cut out for this. This is totally reasonable."
Yeah,
but it's insane.
But
it's
when
insane.
You're in the weeds, so to speak, that becomes your reality, and you accomplish it, and so it doesn't become. To be honest with you, it never struck us. It never struck me as anything amazing, such an amazing feat until years later, when I look back on it and I consider, as I mentioned, writers' rooms that take 3 months to break 10 episodes and the work that goes into these 10 and 13 episode runs that are the norm now, that we would do 40 episodes of television a year.
And that,
with frankly half this writing room size than most shows today.
It's just absolutely crazy. When you look at it that way, it's so amazing to recognize the overall quality of all those shows. You would at some point or another, you would have to say, well, one of these is going to be a dud, you know.
And there were a few.
And we've had those conversations, especially you, me, and Darren, and the entire team there. There were a couple of missteps here and there about how we handled how we felt about some of those. But at the same time, it's like, it's the caliber of the quality of what you achieved cannot be understated. It was a job well done. It really was.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is kind of are we good on time?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So it's one of those writer issues. Atlantis is always running out of power. A running issue it's kind of like with Walking Dead and the number of bullets they have and everything else like that. Like they're keeping track of inventory of resources and everything else. When you're watching Atlantis, there's a part of what's going on in your mind. Part of your mind is how much power does Atlantis have at this given time? It's one of those things that you have to be aware of because it indicates how much Atlantis has the ability to defend itself at any given point throughout the ongoing story. Was it deliberate that ZPM and drone workshops were never found on Atlantis? Because if the city is portable, if it's a spaceship essentially, it would either have factories on board that would design those, or they would be on the ocean floor in that station where we found being built down there. So there was a factory somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, it existed, but I think, obviously, Atlantis as an asset would be something that would just be too dear to give up to an enemy. But even more so would be the power shop, if you will, the power manufacturing shop. So in my mind, there is probably an access point in the city to this manufacturing shop that, in my mind, doesn't exist necessarily within the reality or the universe in which Atlantis exists. I think there's a door to either a parallel universe or a pocket of space-time where this is going on. And I think it's somewhere in the city, but they just have not found it or did not find it. And they didn't find it because it would have just made things, we thought, a little too
They would have been
easy.
invincible.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they could go around and pommeled whoever they wanted, and
Yeah.
you know, they were overwhelmed by the Wraith's numbers, and they simply did not have enough power to deal with the situation. And I think it's one of the things that we'll get into later on. But I was always the Tower. One of the things that the Tower suggests is that there's more than one Atlantis. You know, in terms of the city, and that was, I think, the one nugget that we took away from that was, I think, not that really needed to be resolved was how many Atlantis class ships were there, you know, because if Atlantis is supposed to be the crown jewel of their civilization, having literally withstood several million years of history, you know, without really changing that much, what was, you know, going on there. And it's just one of those things. It's like, guys, we're pounding out 40 stories a year. Give us a break. Please, God. Be thankful you have a good show to watch. Next week on Stargate Atlantis, Shepard watches paint dry. But that's cool, though, that there's some kind of pocket of reality. Because, I mean, they're definitely, ZPMs in particular, are not charged in our universe. So that's neat. Have you ever, Tune Tamasha, have you ever watched a foreign dub of Stargate? And if so, which one did you like? And
I never watch anything dubbed. I hate dubbed. I just find them silly. Apologies to people who like dubbed stuff. But I was in Japan. Oh no, sorry. I'm the opposite. I don't watch. Oh no, that's right. Dubbed. No, sorry. Dubbed in English. I don't watch anything dubbed in English. Sorry.
Right. I don't blame you. Subtitles all the way.
I watched the original. Yeah. Subtitles. I was in Japan, and I agreed to do a kind of a little panel for what was the Japanese cable network that was running Stargate at the time. In any case, they actually showed a clip of Stargate, and Teal'c had the lowest voice I've ever heard.
Register.
Yes, incredibly low, and that kind of struck me. It was just interesting to hear, you know, our characters speak Japanese.
I would love a reel of Stargate scenes from the different language. That's something that I would love to create.
That would be fun. Yes, German, French.
Yeah, we've got 30 countries in this room right now. You all send me a clip.
Yes.
No, I couldn't. You
can do a supercut.
Yeah, could I get away with that on YouTube? Okay, we're gonna table that one.
What you should do is like pick one scene.
Yes.
And as you sort of intercut, just have them change.
That's exactly right. Pick
languages.
like window of opportunity and just go for it.
Yeah.
That would be great. Adam Strange, hello from Ukraine, Mr. Mallozzi, huge fan of SG. Does Twin Peaks and Stargate share the same universe? The great Donis Davis is in both.
Yes, I don't. You know,
I've never seen Twin Peaks.
Don't. Oh, you should.
I'm well aware.
The first season was brilliant. The second season was kind of man. I didn't watch the new one.
Okay.
But I would say no, because even though they are both military men, Colonel Briggs is Colonel Briggs, and General Hammond was General Hammond. So probably not the same universe.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Hellcats.
Yes.
Did you ever feel like the introduction of the Ori made Anubis's transition to partial ascension make less sense? I don't think it really muddies it up that much.
Yeah.
The whole point is that there are many planes of existence.
Yeah.
And the Ori are just operating on a different wavelength. One of the things that was really interesting about where you guys took it in the show, and it's implied through the story, but not effectively stated, but it's implied that the Ori and the Ancients occupy specific quadrants of space-time. That they're actually one's over here and the other's over here, and if they interfere with one another, there is a physical clash, which we witnessed twice. We witnessed it in at the end of Threads, and we witness it in Arc of Truth as well, because they're in their galaxy, and the ancients kind of occupy Pegasus and Milky Way. Otherwise, they would be interfering with one another constantly.
Yeah, exactly. But that's exactly it. I mean, in my mind, there are multiple planes of existence.
That's fair too. And last but not least, George Dromaeotis. Any explanation as to why most aliens speak English?
As I've often said, in my mind, they are not speaking English, but once you pass through the gate, as you're going through the wormhole, you are implanted with nanites that allow you to translate or, understand alien languages as though you were listening to English, and kind of vice versa.
That's fair. I think that's one of the successes of Star Trek, is that they really built in the UT, the idea of the universal translator, especially in Enterprise. They definitely are able to back sell it and say, this is something we've been working on. It's in our communicator pins. If I had the chance to go back to SG-1 Season 1 and stick my head in that writer's room when John and Brad and Rob were all there, one of the only things that I would have said is, on the first mission, make a Gould UT that Stargate Command gets its hands on, and then that explanation is taken care of.
Yep.
So, but it still makes for a great beat in Wormhole Extreme about, I forget which crew member says, "Why not? They speak English." There's just certain tropes of sci-fi, and sooner or later, you just kind of got to get over it and watch the show.
Yeah, but it still would be good to, give a sort of theoretical reasoning for why this is.
Yep. The show must go on. It's as simple as that. Joe, thank you once again for coming.
Oh, this was delightful.
I always
a lot of
enjoy
fun.
These, and I'm looking forward to future seasons with you. Thank you for providing clarification.
Speaking of which, I'm just curious. So, are we going to go straight through SG-1 and then move on to Atlantis?
What would you like to do?
Whichever I believe it's your call.
Because
at this point, this is the point where you make the decision whether you're sort of alternating between Atlantis and SG-1, or if you want to just finish SG-1 and then move on to Atlantis.
Considering that we speak once a month, I think that it's important for us so that we can say, well, last month, because the information from last month is going to be fresher in our minds, and it'll be helpful if it wasn't the opposite show.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That makes fair.
In my opinion, I think we should stick with each show so that as we move along in time here, we'll be like, okay, last month I do remember talking about this. It's clearer to me than 2 months ago. We've had that benefit so far, and we haven't really thought about it because it's only been one show. So, but my friend, absolute pleasure to have you as always.
Thank you. Thanks.
So, you take care of that little one there. I hear.
I will. She's getting cranky.
Right. Exactly.
It's dinner time. All right,
again, my friend.
Thanks. Take it easy, David.
I'll catch you in April.
All right.
Bye-bye. Bye. Joseph Mallozzi, writer and executive producer of Stargate SG-1. Questions for me. Jenny Stiven. Hello. Let's get Craig Engler or Joanna Delgado. So I'm guessing that those are Sci-Fi Network people. That would be great. I will look into that. I don't know if they'll do it, though. We'll have to see. And if we do it, fans, you cannot chew them up. If they come on the show, then we have to be nice to them. I have wanted to get, and I need to make a concerted effort now because we have just passed 10,000 subscribers. Yay to us. Thank you all so much for making this possible. I need to reach out to Charlie Cohen because he is so critical to the success of Stargate from the MGM side. He was a fan of this show. And I don't think we will ever truly appreciate how much he had to do with that. We've had little insights here and there, There's a portrait of him at the end of Stargate SG-1, a celebration of 10 years, the celebration book. And that's there for a reason. I'd love to have him on. But yeah, Craig Engler, Joanna Delgado. Jenny, help me Help me with that one. So those higher industry connections. You should have seen me try and get some of the Air Force people. I wanted to have John Jumper on. I wanted to have General Ryan on because their cameos were terrific. And the Air Force is like, sorry, we can't get in touch with them. And it's like, oh, come on. I just want to have them on my show for 10 minutes. Selene, we want Christopher Heyerdahl as a guest on Dial the Gate. Christopher passed on us. So I reached out to him 2 or 3 months ago now, and he said, I appreciate the offer, but I just can't right now. So I will be I'll be approaching him again 7 or 8 months. I don't want to badger people. I don't think that that's a good idea. If you guys, have these people, if you have them on Twitter, please reach out to them and say, I would love to see you on Dial the Gate. I would love to have, and see if they respond, because if they say yes, okay, send me the screenshot at dialthegateshow@gmail.com and I'll reach out to them. The people who have, Lou Diamond Phillips, I've tried to reach out to him. I haven't been able to hear back. I don't think he's ignoring me, but I just think he's so busy. Christopher Heyerdahl has said no for the time being. There's a few others that I'm not going to get into, but let me tell you something. That's the hardest part about doing this show is scheduling. That's hard. I sent out 15 requests last week, and I've gotten responses from 5 of them, which I think is actually pretty good. So, it's all just different. It's different for everybody. This is a weird time right now. I know I reached out to a lot of agents, and they're like, we're not currently representing these people. You have to reach out to their managers. So, COVID hit everybody hard. There's a lot of people who are, they're not necessarily out of work, but they're suspended from a lot of stuff right now. And not everyone wants to talk. Sue-Ann Braun actually made that point where, she was talking with some people who she wanted to have on her show, and they were like, we're just not really feeling it right now. And I can't say I blame them. So, Mash G, did you read the books that are supposed to follow on the end of Atlantis? What did you think of them? I have not read the Legacy series. I have read a few of the SG-1 books, and from what I read, I really enjoyed them. Diana Botsford and I are friends. I have read both of her books. I cannot recommend those enough. I know I'm biased, but I cannot recommend those enough. That's Four Dragons and The Drift. So those are definitely great stories. Let me see here. Question for David sent in via email. Michael B. In the first episode where they meet Daniel Jackson and Captain Carter discovers the dialing device, she makes a MacGyver reference, but I've seen a different version where she doesn't make that reference. I'm curious what version was first and who thought of making the MacGyver reference in the first place. Well, I imagine it's Brad and Jonathan. It's probably Jonathan because it's eliminated from the final cut, which suggests that it was a Jonathan idea. But maybe not. So Brad is the final cut, which I love for many reasons, because it is the it's the version of the show that you would want, of the pilot that you would want to see, knowing the 10 seasons that follow. It recognizes that there are 10 seasons that follow. So like Kowalski saying, Colonel, I didn't even know you didn't have a child. I didn't even know you had a son. And it backs, they retro actively make him Jack's best friend by like season 2. So the line about him not having a son is cut. Things like that are the case with Final Cut. And as it's one of my, not issue with the Final Cut, but just a mild concern is that Children of the Gods was basically the brainchild of 2 people, and the Final Cut is the brainchild of one of those people at the end of the day, making it form-fitting to what SG-1 was. So I love both versions, but the MacGyver reference was in the original Showtime broadcast version, and then Amanda Tapping did dubbing of her audio. They re-looped a lot of the main actors' audios for Children of the Gods Final Cut. I know that Peter Williams came back in. They did a new blue screen for him with the helmet so that he could redub the Gould version of the Gould words of "Dial the Choppa I." Because it's like, well, how did they get out of SGC? So that the device that appears in Continuum is actually how they did it. We just don't see it on screen. Amanda Tapping's voice work was changed, especially in the wide shots in the Aberdonian, the cartouche room. And Christopher Judge's performance was completely changed. Generally for the better, but I mean, you can, as far as I'm concerned, you can kind of tell that it's dubbed. And I think Michael and Rick also did some voice work as well for Final Cut to change a few things around. So MacGyver definitely, long-winded answer to say MacGyver definitely came first. Robert Cooper question for his next interview. Robert, we had him back last week. We will definitely have him for a fourth part. We're really engaging with some of these creators in a lot of their repeat episodes. This is the original intent of this show, was to have these multi-part, long-form Joe Rogan-esque interviews, and they're working. And I wasn't sure if it would. You know, I mean, you can only have someone back so many times before it's like, yep, I've said all I have to say about that. But there's enough content there that it's really moving forward. And so that now that we're 6 months in, as of the 3rd of April, we'll be 6 months in, and we've had multi-part chapters of the same person coming in. It's really gratifying to see that, yes, these are working, and there's enough content there to continue to have them back, and they don't feel bored. They don't feel like they're getting asked the same questions again and again. And that's partly attributed to you guys asking a lot of the questions that keep them interested in coming back. Because let me tell you something, Rob Cooper, Joseph Mallozzi, as much as they're chill with me, they'll be like, you know what, David, I've already done this. It's been a great show. Truly, best of luck, but, I'm good. And that hasn't happened yet. So that's great. And that's I hugely attribute that to you guys as well. Gary Jones is coming up next. He interviews Jennifer, who is Jennifer Kirby, my production assistant. So that's who you're going to be meeting. Jennifer is actually one of the ones who submitted a video for the Cliff Simon Memorial. She was actually, was she the last one, or one of the last in that video series that we did honoring Cliff. And I do want to have a part 2 of that. I just haven't figured out when I'm going to do it, because I had a lot of submissions that I wasn't able to get to. I work all weekend. And when I found out that we had lost Cliff, I was working 12, 13-hour days in between that time and the time that we aired the memorial episode. And there was only so much that I could build to fit in, because I have to sit at my computer and literally build all these tables. Darren and Linda, really, Gategabber, made that happen, because there was just no time for me to sit down and do that. And that show would not have been possible without them. I think that's everything, if I'm not mistaken. There was quite the laundry list there. Thanks so much to everyone who submitted questions for Joe. Dial the Gate is brought to you every week for free, and we do appreciate you watching. But if you want to support the show further, buy yourself some of our themed swag. We're now offering t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, and hoodies for all ages in a variety of sizes and colors at Redbubble. And we currently offer 4 themed designs and hope to add more in the future. The Word Cloud designs have both a solid background or transparent background option, so you have some flexibility between choosing a light or dark color. Do keep that in mind when you're making your selection. Checkout is fast and easy, and you can even use your Amazon or PayPal account. Just visit dialthegate.redbubble.com, and thanks for your support. And Dial the Gate is partnered with 3dtech.pro. 3D Tech Pro for the month of March to give you a chance to get your very own Atlantis puddle jumper, as seen there, and BC303. To enter to win these items, you need to use a desktop or laptop computer and visit dialthegate.com. Scroll down to Submit Trivia Questions. Your trivia may be used in a future episode of Dial the Gate. The submission form does not currently work for mobile devices. There's 3 slots for trivia. You only need to fill out 1, but if you want to submit 3 questions, that's perfectly fine. Your trivia must be received before April the 1st, or the joke's on you. If you are the lucky winner, I'll be notifying you via your email to get your address. Be sure to check out our partner's website for more Stargate-related merchandise at 3dtech.pro. And that's all she wrote. When I reach the end of every show, my brain is racking, because it's like I know that I'm missing something. I did not pull any Stargate art for this week. I apologize for that. just trying to reorient myself for a lot of things here and move forward with that. We have a great lineup of guests coming. Next week, we have Peter DeLuise, director and producer. This man is one of my favorite people on the earth. And he hasn't done a lot of interviews lately. And I was like, you know what? Let's reach out to him. Let's see if he'll be interested. And he responded to me, I think in record time, like 5 minutes. He FaceTimed me. We talked for nearly an hour about the goals of the show and even about Dagwood, his role on Sequest and everything else. Just caught up. I haven't talked to this man in 14 years. And I think you're going to love it. I think you're going to love having him on. And so he's going to be April the 4th at 12 p.m. Pacific time. You're not going to want to miss that one. Ask him a question because he is a force. And there's going to be a lot of laughs. Elise Levesque, Chloe Armstrong, is going to be joining us at 2 p.m. Pacific time, 2 hours after Pete on April the 4th as well. So come in and have some questions ready for SGU's Chloe Armstrong. April the 11th, we have Jay Brazeau, Harlan and the Lord Protector from Stargate SG-1 and Atlantis, respectively. And then David Hewlett, part 2 of David Hewlett, will be later that day on April the 11th. April the 25th, Musetta Vander, Sean Ock will be joining us as well. Really excited about this slate. I've got more for you in the works. I've just organized our giveaway for the month of April. I cannot wait to show you this giveaway. It is so cool. The fan community is really something, and there was a member of the community who reached out and showed me this stuff. He wanted to get some of his product behind me here on the shelf, and I was like, well, I want to give one away. And he's like, okay. So he's going to be our sponsor in April. I'm not going to announce that until the end of this month. But yeah, that's where we're at. I think that's everything I've got covered, and I think we're good to go from there. Gary is going to be taking it away in just a moment, just half an hour with a fan interview, so you enjoy that. And that's what we've got. I'm David Reed for Dial the Gate. Thanks for watching. See you on the other side.